If you enjoy a good art book, be sure to check out She's a Wildcat, The Art of Candy. I co-created the book with Candy, who is one of the most talented lowbrow artists of all time, so I had such a blast working on it and hope you will reading it. For more information about the book and where you can get a copy, just follow the link in the description. This is a review of Mondo Blitzo Volume 1, which is the self-published art monograph of Brett Parson, who is probably best known for his work on Tank Girl. One of the biggest personal highlights of curating the anthology art book Rockabilly Psychobilly was being able to work with Brett as one of the contributing artists. I was just so drawn to his art style, and I think that's what separates a great artist from a good artist: discovery and mastery of a unique, defined style, which I can't even imagine how difficult that must be to achieve, but I am definitely a sucker for artists who use a bold, colourful cartoon style to depict content that's not for kids, like pulp magazine covers and exploitation movie posters, but rendered in a beautiful, colourful cartoon style. I think it's so fun and visually appealing, which I guess is why he was such a perfect choice for Tank Girl. But I think even more important to his personal style, and really the thing that convinced me that he was a good choice for the art anthology, is Brett's not just a great illustrator, but a great designer, which elevates his work and this book immeasurably. Specifically, the art itself is actually very clean, very thick, bold lines, but stands out from the typical sterilized digital art look by almost always having some sort of worn, dirty quality, or like it's seen through a grindhouse filter. And so his art has an analog look to it, like posters and comics and lunchboxes that were discovered in a treehouse. Parts are scratched and folded and faded and dirty, or price stickers still on them. There's this used, aged texture to it, which also really helps sell the retro graphic design sensibilities he often infuses. And mentioning all this is important to understanding why this art book is so successful, because a great artist does not guarantee a great art book. So remember before when I said establishing style is what separates great artists from good, but also one of the hardest things to achieve? Well, the same goes for designing a book, particularly a monograph. How do you have the book's design reflect the spirit and feel of the art? That's very hard, and most art books don't bother, which is fine. If you've got awesome art, then as long as the sizing and layout are well handled, it's probably gonna be a good art book. But what separates great art book design is the ability to make the book design feel tailored to the content and reflective of the aesthetic. They're called art books, so the art and the book should synergize in order to create a strong, cohesive package, and that's what we've got here. The book design has the same worn, dirty, rough, almost tactile quality. Very much in keeping with my treehouse analogy from earlier, the analog feel of the art is perpetuated and augmented by the decision to present it in this scrapbook style. You'll see tape as if it's being used to hold the art in place. Some pieces are askew or layered, covering one another, but never in a way that's sacrificing the art. One thing you may or may not have noticed is that with only a very few deliberate exceptions, there is otherwise no white paper to be seen in this book. Anywhere there's blank space where white would usually be showing through, the book will use sketch pages as a background or some sort of textured background like wood. That sort of minor detail is almost entirely irrelevant. Had those couple of pages used a white background instead of wood, it would have had zero impact on your enjoyment of this book. So who cares? Well, the creator obviously cares enough to put the time and effort into ensuring they're making the book the best they possibly can, which means they take it seriously and have pride in their work and in giving the reader the best possible experience, which makes me care, because when you forgo those inconsequential details, when the goal is good enough and not arete, then you're just like all the other indolent, half-assed books on the shelves. And coming across someone willing and able to put 110% into their book is so despairingly rare that I think it deserves the time taken to appreciate that attention to detail. Because as meaningless as they may seem in and of themselves, taken all together, the result is one of the best designed and overall brilliantly handled monographs I've ever seen. Some will certainly disagree based on personal tastes and values. You may have noticed there's no text in the book at all, it's just art. Also not many sketches or progress works, though as someone who really doesn't like too much of that stuff in art books, I think this was another example of the book's good judgment, because it shows just enough sketches and progress pieces that they are represented and you get some insight and idea of it, but not so much that it's a boring, space-wasting feature. Most people want to see as many beautiful final works as possible, and the book makes sure that's its priority. It's just nice and, again, far too rare to come across an art book that feels like it was handled by someone who knows what they're doing, wants to to make the best book they can and not just taking the reader for a ride. Though if you are someone interested in sketches, Brett did release a sketchbook called Super Trash in 2010. Speaking of other books, even though this book is called Volume 1, it's actually not Brett's first art book. I think the first was Blitz Cadet, The Art of Brett Parson in maybe 2009. Then there was another book a few years later called The Blitz Cadet Art Book. I've never actually seen either of these, but I have a feeling they may actually be made up mostly of art not in Mondo Blitzo, and the reason I suspect that is because this book seems predominantly made up of work from 2012 to 2016, but I'm really not sure, though I did want to mention it just in case you are a big fan or a collector, then that may be of interest. The reason I never picked up either of the first two books is because I think they were only like 48 and 74 pages each, and I kind of have a rule of thumb about not getting art books less than 100 pages, and that's just a personal thing where I feel they're an unsatisfying tease rather than the substantial record and worthwhile experience I prefer from an art book. Mondo Blitzo, however, is a wonderful 112 pages, and so even more than the aesthetic achievements of the book's design, by far the most key factor responsible for the success of this book is the page count. However, a 100-page minimum is just an arbitrary target if there's tons of wasted space or simple sketches taking up whole pages. It has to be paired with discerning layout, which this book does really well, except in a few cases where it drops the ball with artwork spread across 2 pages that really shouldn't have been, resulting in key parts of the art being lost in the center, which is really the only criticism I have of this book. It's like less than a handful of instances, but a real pet peeve of mine, and particularly glaring and surprising given the impeccable judgment on display throughout the rest of the book. Most pages feature one image that strikingly fills the whole page without any margins, and I think that's well balanced with my favorite pages, which are definitely where multiple images per page were used while still being sized well, because those give more opportunity for those scrapbook vibes and allow for more content, and the result is a substantial, worthwhile collection of rip-roaring, electrifying, badass visual treats and presented in a book designed to live up to that. Sadly, however, at the time of recording, it looks like the book's out of print, but there may be hope because when the book was first published in 2016, it sold out very quickly and I missed out. Luckily, Brett did a second printing 2 years later, so I made sure to pre-order that time, so hopefully it will get another printing down the line. Meanwhile, I'll be eagerly looking forward to Volume 2.